There was a double homicide in the town before you come up there, where husband caught the wife cheating, went to the motel, shot both of them, and then tried to flee over the pass.
Sounds like a country song.
Yeah, right? And there's nobody. So going that way, there's the state trooper, there's my dad. That Concrete is the town where like the school is, and like there's like the highway goes through, there's pizza station, grocery store, a couple little stores, and then there's Main Street. So there's not a lot going on. They did have a police department at the time. So they tried, I think they threw out a spike strip. Guy went through that. So now before he goes over the pass, once he's over the pass, he's gone. So it became my dad and the state trooper that had to stop
When you
him.
say over the pass, he's gone where?
Into Eastern Washington.
Oh, okay.
And then there's side roads and you can get up to Canada. So now he's like gone that way. So, and it's a danger because the way that he was driving, like you're on that canyon road and
right.
So he comes flying through, they're waiting for him, and he comes flying through and they get into the canyon. So there's like a river that goes through the mountains, and it's a 2-lane windy road with guardrail. That's it. And then straight embankment. And the guy wouldn't stop. So I have more stories. My whole childhood photo album is my dad. If people didn't stop, he'd make them stop. So the patrol car is always down a ditch or on a rock, and then me in the background, like, okay, Dad wrecked another car. So this time they're like, he's going to stop. So they got him, and it was a new trooper. They got the nickname Ram and Dan. His name was Dan. Ram and Dan. So they came in and they came around, he hit him, pushed him into the guardrail, got him pinned up against the guardrail. My dad went out, busted the window with the butt of his gun, and like Superman through. Well, the guy had the rifle under his head. He was actively pulling the trigger. And my dad's like through the car. They're both going at it, fighting for the gun. He's pulling the trigger. The only thing that saved my dad in that moment was the safety was on. But he pulled him out, got him arrested, and it was all good. But not only did I have to, I mean, I didn't witness it, but I heard about it, and I heard about it, and I heard about it. That's a big story.
That's what I was going to ask is your dad giving you all of the details of these stories as a young kid?
Yeah, because guess what? There's nobody to talk to. Who are you going to talk to? And in the 80s and the 90s, you definitely didn't talk about it. Part of the reason I started coaching. We'll get to that.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. Tell me about band practice.
Oh, yeah. So right now I sing. Are we recording?
I don't know. Are we?
I don't know. Are we?
I don't know. Are we? You tell me.
Sure.
It's your show, not mine.
Okay. So I sing. I play guitar. I used to play a bunch of instruments. I'm just super rusty. But yeah, I sing with some guys that just for fun. Right now, we're not really gigging or doing anything. It's just blow off steam and enjoy music.
Has music always been something you've been interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a kid, I took piano lessons. I was in band. I played clarinet and trumpet, guitar. I got a guitar, and then I started to hang out with some guys, and they're like, well, we all play guitar, so you need to play bass. And I was like, okay. So I went and got a bass. And so I started learning how to play bass. I think
everybody who plays bass, that's pretty much the story. Hey, we need a bass player.
Yeah, you do it. And yeah, I've played guitar since I was in 8th grade. I had major stage fright when it came to singing. My entire life up until my mid-20s, I owned a bar, and I put like karaoke and open mic nights. And so I would force myself up in front of everybody. And it was a really small local little dive bar. So I'd force myself out to sing, and I'd go back after I got done, and I would there's cases of beer, and I'd hold them, and you could just hear them clanking. I'm like, oh my God. And I learned so much from that, like pushing myself out of my comfort zone to do it, because I really wanted to. And it was like, well, that sucked. And I know that I don't suck. So I do it again. So fast forward, I taught modeling and acting classes to teenagers, and I taught them how to fail forward, get past the stage fright. I would introduce karaoke and make them sing, even though they didn't want to sing. Because once you do it and you suck at it, and you know you're going to suck at it, you can go back and you get better. So now, singing from a band, no stage fright.
What style of music do you prefer?
Well, I kind of like island vibes. I lived in Hawaii for 10 years, so that's my style. But the guys I jam with they're older, so it's a lot of country, a lot of 70s classic rock type stuff, which I didn't listen to country at all, and now it's like basically all I sing.
Forced into it,
and now I appreciate it. And I'm older because when I was in school, we had a 45-minute bus ride, and we'd have to listen to country music, and I'd get car sick on the bus ride every day. And then it was country music. So growing up, I'm like, no, I'm just going to throw up. So now I'm old enough that I can appreciate it.
So basically country was causing PTS.
Yes, absolutely. My mom, so where I lived was like up in the mountains, little podunk town, and 45-minute mountain road to get to school. And she'd give me pineapple juice in the morning for breakfast. And like,
didn't work with a mountain road?
A couple miles out, the bus driver's like, can you not do that?
Every single time?
I mean, a lot. I remember, so there was a girl so my school is very, very small, and there was a core group of us that went to school kindergarten through senior year. We graduated together. And there was a girl that I went all the way through, and I was on the window seat and she's on the aisle, and I'm like, move. And I just threw up all over her, and all the way up to graduation. I'm like, I'm so sorry. In kindergarten, I threw up all over you. So
I would imagine if that was happening on a regular basis, you just go, Mom, just homeschool me. Don't make me do that.
So if I wasn't taking the bus, the other option was my dad would take me in the patrol car. And this was when you had a plexiglass window. There's no airflow. And so if he just closed that, it's again, windy road, and he's driving super fast. And so still car sick.
Wait a minute. He'd put you in the back?
Oh yeah. 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 That was like, my mom would get to sit in the front most of the time. Every once in a while I'd get to sit in the front, but for the most part, I was in the back, and he would keep the window open unless I had like headphones on. He could hear my music, or if I was being annoying, and he would just like that. And so to this day, I still get car sick. I drove here because windy roads. I'm like, no, I have to either fall asleep or I'm just not happy.
So if you're not driving, you're getting car sick.
Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely. So where is hometown for you?
Now,
when you're talking about this, up in the mountains.
Yeah. So I grew up in Washington State. There's a little tiny town called New Halem, and it's literally 1 mile marker to mile marker, tucked in the North Cascade Mountains, right before you go over the pass to get to Winthrop in Eastern Washington. And that's where my dad was an outpost deputy sheriff.
How did he end up out there?
Good question. They shoved him out there.
I mean, in the sense of, so he wasn't living in that area when he became a cop?
No. So it's really weird how it works. So Whatcom County Sheriff's Office is in Bellingham, and New Halem is like across the mountains. But in order to get there, you have to go through Skagit County, up the valley, all the way up to this little tiny town. So it's Whatcom County on the Seattle city. So there's so much. It's just this little weird pocket.
So it's in one county, but there's no way to easily get to it.
There's no way to get there. So, anytime he had a call, he had to go all the way to Bellingham. So that's a 2-hour drive easy. So if he arrested somebody in the middle of the night, he wasn't coming home. And then we would go, almost weekly, we'd go to the courthouse, we'd go to the station, whatever. We were always there. So he originally started working for Whatcom in Bellingham and Blaine. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly how long he did that, but he got sent up to New Halem. And normally what they did was it was a 2-year stint, and he ended up being up there for 17 years. So it was his town.
Really took to it.
Yeah. And everybody loved him. And so the way that this town works is it's the Seattle Saylight Hydroelectric Project. So there's 3 dams. So it's what supplies a lot of the electricity for Seattle. So you have the Gorge, Diablo, and Ross Lake powerhouses and the dams. And it's on the river. So that's where I'm saying. So it's on the Skagit River for Seattle Saylight in Whatcom County, but you have to get through Skagit County to get there. It's a vortex.
and how, when you say a town, how many people are we talking about?
Like 25 houses.
Oh, wow. So really small.
Yes. So, my dad was the sheriff. We had a sign in our front yard.
Sheriff
here. And, anybody that was coming through, like that's where, I mean, this was in the 80s, so no cell phones. And nobody pays attention to signs. It says like no gas for the next 72 miles. There's no gas station. There's a post office, a little tiny general store. Now there's like this really cute, information tourist center, but that wasn't there when I was a kid. And that's it.
Who wants to go there as a tourist?
Well, because you have to go over the pass is gorgeous.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's absolutely amazing. And then to get to Winthrop, which is like a cute little like cowboy town, it's very popular. All the bikers go through over the summer.
Got it.
But my dad he was responsible for a 72-mile radius, just him. And then his closest backup was one state trooper that lived 14 miles away from us. And that was family. If I wasn't home, I was at their house. So
did people in the town, if they needed law enforcement, did they just call your house?
Yeah.
Were you the dispatcher?
Sometimes. Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. Like my experience with law enforcement's a little bit different. And if you read my profile on the website and stuff, it's like I learned to run radar when I was 4, like legitimately. I ran radar. I had my own little radio station that I could talk to the local cops. They all knew who I was. I was J39 Junior. I had business cards and a badge. I chose who we would pull over. So
were you going out on ride-alongs a lot with your dad?
Every day there's nothing else to do. Like in this town. So there was our house, which was the sheriff's. 3 houses down was the volunteer firefighter. So we had ambulance and fire right there. And if something happened, there's the sirens, one on each end of the town that would go off. And then everybody that was volunteer for everything would rush to the fire station and then they'd go out on the calls. We had park rangers and just the community. And there was a few, because the people that live there are mainly there for working for Cialce Light and working at the powerhouse, taking care of the grounds and all of that stuff. Other people drive in. So there was only a few of us kids. I'm still to this day best friends with them, and we don't call ourselves best friends. We were sisters. We didn't choose to be friends. We had to be. We've had many, many fights in the years, but we're still in each other's lives.
We can fight, but we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, we're stuck. It's like, so yeah, my dad, that's what we did. I would just go on patrol with him all the time. And it's kind of funny because I still probably shouldn't admit this, but the way that I drive, because of my own rules when I was a kid, if you're going 5 over, you're fine. If you're going 7 over, we might flash the lights at you, maybe pull you over, give you a warning. Probably not going to ticket you. 10 over, depends on your attitude. If you're going to have an attitude, you're getting a ticket. If not, we'll let you go. 15 is like automatic ticket. And those were my own rules that I set when I was a kid. And I still kind of drive by that. You're like, other cops don't necessarily agree with that.
Why aren't you going along with my rules?
But do you know who I am? And the town. So, I mean, he was a sheriff that he had major respect. He passed away 22 years ago now. 21. When I go home, they still talk about him. He was a legend. And you didn't speed through his town. He made the newspaper so many times. He was so proud for being the meanest, baddest, whatever. I still have some of those articles, or other people would be offended because they're just like, oh, this cop, you can't speed and he'll be mean. And as long as you treat him like a god, da, 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 da. And he's like, yeah, good. Don't speed through my town. Right. Like Hell's Angels would come through. They respected him. They knew, slow down, wear your helmet. And the little stupid whatever helmet, that doesn't count. But he was also very fair. And one of my favorite times, he pulled his family over and he gave them a choice. They could get the ticket, or it was a van full of kids and they're getting ready to go over the pass, which is 72 miles of a windy mountain road, nowhere to stop. There's pullouts, but no bathrooms, nothing. So he gave them a choice. He's like, you can take the ticket, or I'm going to follow you up to the little convenience store. You're going to take the kids in. You can't say no. You have to buy them anything they want. So ice cream, soda, whatever. Hyper up these kids and send them over the pass. So they actually took the ticket.
You're like, at least they'll sleep.
They'll sleep. Like, no, thank you. We won't speed through your town again.
Brothers, sisters for you?
Yeah. I have 3 older half brothers. So they're 20 years older than me. So that was like they're like uncles kind of.
Right.
they were from my dad's first marriage. Their mom passed away from cancer when they were all 18. And so he moved up. He actually met my mom up in this area. She worked at the resort that was there. And it's funny because their love story is not a romantic love story. Like you think your parents are this certain way, and then you get older and they tell you the truth and you're like, wait, what? My mom said that he was the ugliest person she had seen when he came in, because he had been working in Bellingham and he was driving the drunk tank. And he got T-boned by a drunk driver in that. And so it flipped. I have all the pictures. And so he ended up breaking his neck, like had stitches like all the way. And he was bald and had the hair going around the side like that. And then these stitches and just all beat up. And that was my mom's first impression of him, and wasn't instant love at first sight. But through the time, as he was healing, he was kind of a ladies' man at that point. And so he'd be flirting with the girls at the bar, and she started getting jealous and she's like, no, you're mine. And my mom was actually told that she could never have kids, like from her first marriage, medically impossible. And here I am.
Ta-da!
After pretty much like their first date.
Whoops.
I want to be here. So yeah.
And growing up in this environment of basically writing tickets since you were 4, no interest in becoming a cop yourself?
No. No.
You didn't want to think about that answer?
No. And it's funny that I'm in relationship with one, because I also was like avoided that my entire adult life, not just because I didn't want the stress, because the stress of it growing up, oh man, so many stories. I'll take water before I go on this one. So I was young. I still remember the pajamas. I was holding my teddy bear. I was at my front door. And so where we were in the mountains, everybody would go up there and go camping. There's campgrounds everywhere. And some guy was having, I must have been like 6, maybe 7 at the most. And a guy was having a bad trip on LSD or some sort of drugs. And he was walking through the town, screaming, yelling, just belligerent. And everybody was calling my dad. And it all went down right in front of my house. So again, my dad didn't have backup. So the park rangers came out, and the neighborhood. So it took 5 grown men to get this guy contained and into the back of the car. And I watched the whole thing right in front of my house. Like my dad's going, like, that's the first time I'd seen him, go full beast mode. And they got him in, and he came in, he's all pissed off. He's like, I gotta take this guy. I'm not gonna be home tonight, da, da, da. And I looked and his arm was bleeding. And I was like, Dad, you're bleeding. He looks down, he's like, now I got to go to the hospital too. Cause the guy had bit like a full chunk out of his arm.
Oh, wow.
So that was like one of my first real memories, solid core memory in there. And there was just so many things. I'm going to go down. Now you got me doing memory lane. There was a double homicide in the town before you come up there, where husband caught the wife cheating, went to the motel, shot both of them, and then tried to flee over the pass.
Sounds like a country song.
Yeah, right? And there's nobody. So going that way, there's the state trooper, there's my dad. That Concrete is the town where like the school is, and like there's like the highway goes through. There's a pizza station, grocery store, a couple little stores, and then there's Main Street. So there's not a lot going on. They did have a police department at the time. So they tried, I think they threw out a spike strip. Guy went through that. So now before he goes over the pass, once he's over the pass, he's gone. So it became my dad and the state trooper that had to stop
when you
him.
say over the pass, he's gone where?
Into Eastern Washington.
Oh, okay.
And then there's side roads and you can get up to Canada. So now he's like gone that way. So, and it's a danger because the way that he was driving, like you're on that canyon road and
right.
So he comes flying through, they're waiting for him, and he comes flying through, and they get into the canyon. So there's like a river that goes through the mountains, and it's a 2-lane windy road with guardrail. That's it. And then straight embankment. And the guy wouldn't stop. So I have more stories. My whole childhood photo album is my dad. If people didn't stop, he'd make them stop. So the patrol car is always down a ditch or on a rock, and then me in the background, like, okay, Dad wrecked another car. So this time they're like, he's going to stop. So they got him, and it was a new trooper. They got the nickname Ram and Dan. His name was Dan. Ram and Dan. So they came in and they came around, he hit him, pushed him into the guardrail, got him pinned up against the guardrail. My dad went out, busted the window with the butt of his gun, and like Superman through. Well, the guy had the rifle under his head. He was actively pulling the trigger, and my dad's like through the car. They're both going at it, fighting for the gun. He's pulling the trigger. The only thing that saved my dad in that moment was the safety was on, but he pulled him out, got him arrested, and it was all good. But not only did I have to, I mean, I didn't witness it, but I heard about it, and I heard about it, and I heard about it. That's a big story. That's
what I was going to ask is your dad giving you all of the details of these stories as a young kid?
Yeah, because guess what? There's nobody to talk to. Who are you going to talk to? And in the 80s and the 90s, you definitely didn't talk about it. Part of the reason I started coaching. We'll get to that. But that was his way of processing. He wasn't going to see a therapist. He wasn't going to go talk to anybody. And it was a cool thing. Like they got the bad guy. So stories, my dad was a storyteller all the time. But my mom was his sounding board. My mom helped come take pictures for evidence. She would help write reports. It was a family unit.
Hire one of us, get all of us.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we had the radio. It was always on. Like we knew what was going on up and down all the time. We also had an alarm in our house. So the store, if somebody tried to break into the store, it would trigger the alarm, and it was like a loud alarm. So it would trigger it and just make it, and we'd have to go turn it off. And then my dad would go on the call.
But just for one store? That was just for one store?
The one little store that was there. It was just looped straight to our house. So very different upbringing.
So basically 24/7, he's law enforcement.
Yes. And he also would get pissed that when people stopped in the middle of the night, he would open the door when people, like 1 o'clock in the morning, he would open the door in his tidy whities. He did not care. He's like, come back in the morning. You missed the sign, like go back 14 miles or just wait, because I'm not going right now. And then if he did need to go get gas for somebody, there was the Department of Transportation. They had their own, so he could get gas from that, but he didn't like doing that. So,
but ultimately for you as a kid growing up, there was never any negative blowback, so to speak, because your dad was the city or the town cop.
No, because everybody, like I said, everybody really respected him. There were some people that didn't like him, but those were usually the ones that had a reason not to like him because they didn't want to get busted for whatever they were doing.
So since you were on the fence as a kid growing up about wanting to be a cop, what was your goal for adulthood?
So I thought like most kids, I wanted to be a model. I wanted to be an actress, which I did pursue that. And my dad was super supportive. So he's the one that took me to my auditions, which was really funny. I had gone through different modeling schools and all this stuff. And I went for one of my very first auditions, and I was nervous. I'm in there. It's like, I'm Tami Sharp. And I just bombed it. Horrible. But the casting director loved him and convinced him to audition. And he was not an attractive dude, like at all. So he went back and he was joking around. He read for the part. And about a week later, the phone rings. He got the call back and I did not. So that was bad. He didn't take it seriously. He went back down to Seattle. He did the audition. And if he would have taken it serious, he probably would have got it, because this was for TiVo when TiVo came out.
Okay.
It was a TiVo commercial where they wanted a cop, right, and he could have played himself. But he blew it, but it was really funny. So he was very supportive with all of that.
In high school and stuff, were you all into the drama classes and all that?
Yeah. My school was very,
or I say classes.
Yeah.
There were 3 people in your class.
Basically, our graduating class was less than 50 people for a huge radius. So, no, we had drama class. I was president of the drama club. I'd been modeling, doing all that stuff. And then I moved out after high school and I went up to Canada to go to acting school. But in order to finish that story, I have to backtrack. Okay. So when I was 11, I was in 6th grade. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4, stage 5 prostate cancer. Doctors said, you're done. You have 6 months, best case scenario, tie up your loose ends, you're done. And my dad had been 20 years Air Force and then 15, 16 however much the maths for that. But he'd been a cop. So he was very, very stubborn. And so my 3 brothers that are 20 years older than me, they grew up with him when he was in the Air Force. Totally different person. He smoked. As soon as he found out my mom was pregnant with me, he stopped smoking. But he drank, he smoked back in the military days. And then I got this totally different person. But 2 of my brothers are identical twins. So by the time I came around, I couldn't pull anything. Like, he threatened to send me to juvie just for not cleaning my room, like legit. So he was a tough dude. So he gets this death sentence, and he was just kind of like, that's the only time I saw him cry. I never saw my dad cry the entire time for anything except for the night that he got that. He went out on the steps and he broke down. But he made the decision. He was like, you know what? Fuck that. That's not my story. I have a daughter that's 11. It's my job as her parent to see her turn 18. She's an adult. Then I can go. And so he created that for his story. He didn't do chemo that time. He did radiation. And this was before the internet, before holistic, like he did what the doctor said. I think his saving grace really was, he was double diagnosed, so that he had prostate cancer, found out he was diabetic at the same time. So he had to cut sugar. And anybody that has any nutrition training, sugar feeds cancer. So he was naturally starving the cancer without even knowing, and then also doing radiation on top of it. So his goal was, once I'm 18, he's done his job. And I would argue with him. I'm like, no, like, you got to walk me down the aisle. You got to meet your grandkids. Like, no, like, create a different story. He's like, nope, 18, anytime after that is borrowed time. And
a little kind of looking back on, a little morbid to talk to a young daughter growing up that way, you know, but at the same, you can make the other side of the argument. Was it better that he was just straight up honest with you? I
appreciate anybody that knew him, anybody that knows me. I fall straight from that tree. Very stubborn, very thick skin, and very just blunt and honest. And that's one of the reasons I'm blunt and honest. And why he had respect, because he didn't bullshit anybody, and I don't either. So what are you going to do? You're handed 6 months tops. You have an 11-year-old. What are you going to do? You might as well be honest. Right. So, and I was a daddy's girl. Like, I hung out. I just found a picture finally of him. So we lived right on the river in the backyard, and he was teaching me how to shoot guns across the river and aim for ducks. I didn't hit any ducks for all the people, but aim for ducks, aim for certain rocks, aim for pop cans, whatever. But yeah, so he was always straight. And my entire teenage years was always, you're on my time. And one day I'm not going to be here. And I hated that. I'd argue. I rebelled. So not wanting to be a cop too is, he taught me respect. Yes or no, sir. You know, have respect, but at the same time, question authority. And then as a teenager, I naturally rebelled against it. But he fought. And anyway, so he lived, for 7 years in complete remission with a 0 PSA count. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was 17. He was the president of the school board. And so at my high school graduation, he got to hand me my diploma. So that's the only time that I cried because I wanted out. Right. Peace out, little podunk town. But that was really, really special. So I graduated in June. I turned 18 in August, and I moved up to Canada to go to acting school in September. So I was 18. I was out of the house. He had set me up with a homestay family. So it's kind of like a foreign exchange student, except for Canada. So it doesn't quite count for me. But it was a really cool house. It was a large house, and they had all sorts of different foreign exchange students. There was a 5-star chef from Tokyo. We had all sorts, like Brazil came through. I don't remember everybody, but all these teenagers were coming through from different places. And the husband was a cop for Vancouver PD. So my dad set me up. Like, you're out on your own.
I'm just going to hand you off.
Yeah, but not really. Don't fuck up.
Why Canada for acting school and not, because isn't Iowa known for acting schools?
Because it was close. It was right across the border.
But so. I mean, is that just locale to where you were at?
Location, and that's what my acting teacher recommended. So my plan, I had a plan. Go to the 6 month, knock that out. So I had some credentials, and then I was actually going to move to San Diego to go to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising and study interior design. And that's a 2-year. So my plan was do the 6 month, get some acting experience so I could be acting. Cause you come down to LA area, you just act,
Everybody
right?
acts.
Okay. Thank God that didn't work out. And then I'd get the interior design degree, and then I would go to a 4-year and get a business degree. That was the plan. However, so I moved out September. I was up there come December, January. I've been 18 for a couple months now. And I got the call that my dad's cancer was back, and it was aggressive. He had also said that if it came back, he wasn't going to fight again. It was too much. And he had told me that. He was blunt with me the whole time. The rest of my family apparently missed that memo. I was the only one that heard him. So I ended up finishing up the program. I left about a week early. They passed me and everything, and I went back. And one of the things that set me up, like this story is in depth because it set the whole blueprint for my life.
Right.
So I had already learned the power of the mind from 11 years old, that you can create your own reality, and it doesn't matter what a doctor or an authority figure tells you. You can buy into that and create that as your reality, or you can say, no, thank you. I'm going to go do something else. Watch me. And so I'd already lived with that for my crucial developmental years. I also didn't do drugs because my dad was a genius. And I will give this parenting advice to anyone, especially if you're a cop. When I was in high school and I wanted to go to parties, he was like, you can go. I'm like, yeah, right. What's the catch? He's like, no, you can go. You're not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to bust you. You can totally go. You drink, you're not going to get in trouble. Okay. He's like, if I find out you're at the party, I'm going to bust the party. I'm going to send all your friends to juvie. Anybody that's an adult that brought the alcohol, they're going to go. And I'm going to bust everybody. And you're going to be the school narc. I'm like,
thanks, Dad.
I will stay home, which was genius because I didn't. I smoked weed one time in 8th grade. Didn't like it.
That's what everybody says.
Right. But I didn't. And he put the fear, he threatened to, he's always like, if you're going to do it, I'm going to take you to jail and show you the burnouts. And he would, is the thing. He'd take me down there and be like, look, you don't do drugs. And so and honestly, because of that dude that he arrested when I was little, that's my first impression of drugs. So I was like, no, that's not for me. I don't want anything to do with that. And so I've never done drugs. A lot of my friends and a lot of my classmates can't say the same. Meth hit the valley really, really hard. And just even, we can get in there, but my ex-husband ended up doing that too. So, anyway, so many different parts, but, yeah, so my dad was very stubborn. In the hospital, he ended up, there's so much to this. So people that are in authority figure, they need to just understand that the words that they say have power. And when somebody's in a vulnerable position, it magnifies how much power those words have. So doctors and nurses, cops too, need to have a little bit more compassionate bedside manner type verbiage. Because anything that you say, the person will take as fact. So my dad was in this vulnerable position. He had fought for so long, and all it took was one nurse to say something along the lines of you're going to die. You're not coming out of this. And it put him into a panic attack in the hospital. And because it put him in a panic attack, they ended up sedating him. Because they sedated him, he started going downhill. So then they moved him to the ICU. And even though he was in the ICU and they had sedated him, he still was trying to pull out all the IVs and get out. And honestly, we probably had lawsuits on our hands, but after he passed, we were not in a position to even go there. My mom had spent all day at the hospital. She got she was there. She was exhausted. She got her all the way back home. We're tucked in for the night, middle of the night. She's tired. And we get a call from the hospital saying, hey, he went into renal failure. You need to come back. He's about done. And my mom's like, what the hell? We just left. He was totally fine. So for whatever, I must have had school or something. I don't know. I was out of school. I don't know why I didn't go, but a friend came, picked her up, and she went back down. And by the time she got down, it's another hour down to the hospital. It was the wrong patient. They notified the wrong family.
Oh no. And
that's just, it went worse from there with how everything happened. But yeah, so he's in the ICU, he's sedated, and I was pissed. I was 18, and I walked into the room. He's hooked up to machines. He's just bloated. He's huge. He's just a blob. And I was like, turn the fucking machines off. He's done. Like, he's not coming back. He's not happy. Something that I've never shared with anybody was that one of our friends that had gone in when he was in and out of the sedation, he had come out. He asked one of his friends who was also a cop to bring him a gun so he could just end it because they were torturing him. Of course, that didn't happen, but it was like, that's one of the last things my dad actually said when he was alive. So they sedated him, and then they ended up strapping his arms down to the bed. And it's just like, what are we doing? Like, we're only holding on for our own selfish needs. He's done. If he comes back, they're saying he might have brain damage. He's going to have an oxygen tank. I'm like, my dad, if he has a tube coming out of his nose in a tank, the first time he trips over that, he's going to turn around, shoot, and blow everything up. Like, It's just not going to be. So at 18, I made the decision to take him off life support and got my mom on board, which caused a falling out with my brothers. I didn't talk to them for 7 years after that. Lots of drama there. We've healed it since. But we let my dad go, and I have been at peace with it ever since. I know I made the right decision. He had 7 years of extra time. And he is such a huge force in my life. I wouldn't be doing any of what I'm doing with law enforcement if it weren't for him just kind of in my ear pushing me forward. So
right.
That's a lot.
And well, no, the strange world, small world, I can totally relate because I remember the last couple months that my dad was in the hospital with cancer. And so many of the things that you said were bringing back memories of what I dealt with. I remember so many pain meds that calling in the middle of the night, you know, they've got me locked in the basement. You need to come save me, you know. Getting there one day and seeing him completely strapped down going, what the hell? Why is my dad strapped down? And, you know, not looking at the big picture going, unstrap my dad. Yeah. Well, then spending the next hour and a half playing hand fighting because he wanted to try to pull everything out. Yeah. So I can totally relate to, you know, what you experienced because I remember seeing that in my dad. I remember seeing just that. But what I wanted to hit on is what we experienced was the opposite side of it. We experienced the nurses and the doctors, more the doctors than the nurses, to the opposite extreme. Okay. Oh, we're going to get you through this. We're going to get you through this. You know, it's like, stop giving us false hope. You know, you're not God. You're not gonna, I mean, the cancer was completely spread through him. But it's this thing. I mean, he ended up between December 26th and February 13th. I want to say it was like 5 surgeries. It's like, what are you trying to accomplish? Right. You know, because every time they would go in and open him up, because there was so much of the cancer, the sutures and the wounds wouldn't heal. And it's like, are you just trying to feed your own ego thinking that you can, you know, restore this 65 Pontiac? I mean, what is it? So it just kind of the medical system.
And I'm thankful for the experience because it set me up. I mean, so I call myself a well-balanced hippie because I can go full spectrum. I call it woo-woo, full spectrum woo-woo on you. You want to talk chakras and crystals and smudging and paranormal stuff and all of it. I am literally educated and studied it since high school, really. However, because of my upbringing, because of just how I am, I don't resonate with my Burning Man friends. I don't want to go to Burning Man. I'm not going to do drugs. I like showers. And I don't like patchouli. And because my dad was very, you know, anti-hippie back in that day. So, that's one of the reasons too, like starting the coaching program is like, I understand the holistic world. I have respect for good doctors and good medical people. I just have personally, and I have story after story, I've had multiple doctors say, I'm the doctor. And I was like, yeah, but it's my body. Like I had one doctor in my early 20s try to diagnose me with carpal tunnel because I was a bank teller and my hand had fallen asleep, less than 24 hours of symptoms. But I made the appointment because it was just like not coming back. And she's like, you have carpal tunnel. Here's a prescription for steroids and we're going to schedule you surgery. And I was like, are you sure it's not a pinched nerve? She's like, I'm the doctor. Like literally said that to me. And I was like, okay. So I went to a massage therapist. I told her what was going on. She kind of popped my wrist out of place, explained carpal tunnel to me, did something, put it back in. 20 years later, no issue. And I've had multiple experiences, but I've also had experiences with amazing doctors and amazing nurses that I really do understand. But, you know, going back to that time, it shaped me in so many different areas, also with my spiritual side, because I was always interested and always felt like there was other stuff. Didn't quite know what that was. But when I was in the ICU with my dad, I had a camera. So before phones, we had to actually have film and click and do that. And because I had made the decision for everybody, I didn't ever want to retell the story in my mind. And then all of a sudden, well, maybe I should have, or maybe I didn't make the right call. So I took pictures of him in the room, and I have 3 of these pictures. I almost was going to bring one, but I was like, no, it's a little aggressive. But I took these pictures, click, wind, nothing. And the camera would not work at all. And I was like, okay, well, I got what I needed. And I said my goodbyes to him, and I walked out of the hospital and was like, I wonder if the camera's broken. Took a picture, it worked just fine. And I was like, well, that's weird. And there were just so many little things that had happened throughout my life that I had no choice but to understand there's other powers that at play there.
So your dad passes away. Mm-hmm. You've come back home from Canada, having gone off to acting school.
Yes.
What's your next venture?
So I moved back in with my mom while we were in the grieving process, and pushed off San Diego. It's like that. I'm not in a place for that.
It's a horrible place to go. Don't ever, if you ever get the opportunity, never go.
Never go. And so I ended up getting a job to be a tour guide back up. So my mom, at that point, we had moved down to Concrete. So that's where the school was. And again, it's 45 minutes up to New Halem. So I ended up getting a job to go back up there and be a tour guide for the area. I lived in what we call a bunkhouse. So it was, so there's New Halem, and then there's one other little offshoot town called Diablo that has nothing there, except for at the time there was like another tourist center that you could go and have lunch. The cookhouse is what they called it. And then you get to take this really cool incline lift all the way up the hill and then go to the lake, and then you can go up to the Ross Powerhouse. So that, and my mom worked at the Ross Powerhouse at that time. So I got to go be up there, live with the people that I worked with in this house. I got paid. I was making like $20 an hour, and I didn't have to pay to live there and living the large life as at that point.
There's no place
18.
To spend your money, though.
There's no place. Yeah, no. So I banked it. It was great. And it was awesome. And I got to sit up there by myself and just heal, sit on the rocks and talk to the mountains and the trees and just be at peace. And then the next chapter of my life started unfolding because I met my future ex-husband. We started hanging out. And when I met him, he was super positive, really cool guy. We hit it off. But, he was kind of with the partiers and the skaters and all that. But I told him when we started dating, I won't date anybody that does drugs. You can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to be with somebody that does drugs. And he's like, that's fine. I don't need to do drugs. So he didn't. And we were good for a couple years. We moved down to the Seattle area. I got a job at a modeling agency as a part-time instructor, and I worked my way up to being a program director by the time I was 19. Thought I was the shit because I worked at a modeling agency. And we had a good couple years. It was really good. And then we ended up buying a house when I was 21 up in Everson, which is north of Bellingham, right on the Canadian border. We bought this house, we moved in, and 21, I don't know anything. Young and naive, and he had dreams. He was a musician. He wanted to have a recording studio. So I got my mom to give us the money to build a outbuilding for it. Our garage was a band room, the living room was a band room, and all of our friends would come over, and they were all skaters and musicians and punks. And everything is fine. It was, we're 21, so it's a party house. That's a given. But again, I didn't think anything of it. And this is when I learned that the universe will always show you. You don't need to go searching for stuff. The universe will let you know what you need to know.
Right.
I had no idea anything was going on. And he wasn't home one day and I was doing laundry and a bag of Coke fell out onto my shoe. And I was like, what? So when he came home, I just asked him, I was straight up like, what's going on? He's like, oh, it's my uncle's. I'm like, oh, okay. And I knew his uncle. So it made sense that story tracked, until the pattern changed and the stories stopped tracking and he stopped coming home. I'm actually writing a book about all this, so I won't go into too much of it, but I found myself very quickly.
Oh, come on. Give us the details.
I found myself very quickly in a very bad, toxic relationship. We owned our house together, so I couldn't just move out, couldn't leave, couldn't kick him out. And his friends were doing drugs with him, so they were lying for him. And I was the bad guy. So we started fighting. All the things were hitting the fan. He wasn't coming home. I'd be looking out the window, every headlight, like, where are you? And just lied to me, just bold-faced lied. And he came home one night after a party and he was shaking and trembling and sick to his stomach. He's like, I did meth. And I was like, what the it was like a surreal, like I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I'm a goody. I'm a Sunny D after school special. Like, how did I get here? And it was like a scene from a movie. He was in a bathtub and I was fully dressed and I'm holding him as he's rocking, as it's coming out of his pores. He's like, I'm never going to do that again. That was awful. I don't know why I did that. And the next thing I know, I have a meth head on my hands. So, lots of drama with all of that. I learned a lot. My dad had raised me when I was a kid he raised me to think like a cop. He was the type of cop that never sat with his back to the door, always scanning a room, always reading people, and taught me how to scan the room, read people, read body language, eye contact, all that. And then I found myself in this relationship with a drug addict where now I'm trying to study pupil dilation. What kind of drugs is he on? Is he high? Is he, like, what's happening? And studying, and because he's just bold-faced lying to me. And I went down a really toxic path because I didn't know what else to do. So, I was snooping through the phone and finding drugs in his wallet, setting him up to fail because I knew the truth. And I'd set him up and be like, what's this? Oh, it's our friends. I'm like, no, it's not. So
were you putting that much effort into it because you were trying to figure out a way to keep the relationship alive and working, as opposed to just, all right, you got your habits, they're not mine, see ya?
I didn't know any better at the time. And yeah, codependency at the time. And what I realized was after my dad died, I had jumped into that relationship so quickly and we were good for a couple years, so that when that happened, all of a sudden I'm back grieving the loss of my dad.
Right.
And now and not just my dad, but I'm grieving masculine energy in my life, and not knowing who to turn to. Like, we had all the same mutual friends, so I'm now alone, and just handled it really poorly, but I'm thankful for all of it. We ended up breaking up, selling the house, going our separate ways for a while. And then he got clean. He left the state. He went and detoxed. He got clean on his own. And again, I'm young and dumb. So when he was clean.
Round two.
Oh, okay. But the sad thing is, so he got clean. We got married. And then we moved to Hawaii to get away from everybody. And he was clean and he was good. And I trust my gut implicitly. And I knew that would never be an issue again. The problem was round two was the first time because he broke his collarbone and he avoided the prescriptions. He took one Vicodin here or there and he toughed it out. And then he ended up breaking his shoulder and his elbow. Again, he toughed it out and he took very minimal. He was doing well. His downfall was he got what's called a pilonidal cyst. I think that's how you say it. It's a cyst that grows typically in men on your tailbone. And it's not a typical cyst. So in order to stop it, you have to cauterize every single vessel that's going into it or it'll just come back. And in Maui, they don't have the best medical. Again, here I go another round with doctors.
Right.
They don't have the best necessarily. And so they kept taking the cyst out, but not stopping it. So it was just recurring. So he had a really good job at the time, but it was a desk job. And so it was causing so much pain. He couldn't sit. It's throwing his back out. He's going in. we went to the emergency room one time and they cut in through the scar tissue with no numbing. Like they just cut into it, and this grown man's just like, screaming and crying, and it was just awful. And so then here's a prescription for Vicodin. Here's a prescription for Percocet. Here's a prescription for muscle relaxers. A couple months later, oh, that's not working. Let's up the dose. Now you're having anxiety. Here's some more pills. Now you're having depression. Here's some more pills. And the next thing I knew, I had a drug addict back on my hands, except for this time it was legal, justified. And I had said I could never do that again. I would never do that again, but I found myself in the situation. And what made it worse is so he had a job and he had medical insurance. I was a bank teller, had medical insurance. He had to quit his job, so he lost that. And then I became a bartender and I ended up buying the bar. And so I was a small business and I couldn't afford insurance yet. So then he's getting his drugs, unbeknownst to me, from the back of my bar.
Not prescription
anymore. And the next thing I know, here comes the lies again, where our garage door locked on its own, apparently. And the tinfoil was for soldering. And the money that was in the bank bag that he had, that was sitting in the passenger seat, just the cash was gone. And he's like, well, somebody must have stole it when I was pumping gas. I'm like, hold on. You drive a Jeep with a bikini top. It's open. You're telling me that while you're pumping gas, somebody came, opened the door, found the bank bag, unzipped it, took the cash. But like, you didn't see any of that? I think I'm going to call bullshit on that. I'm like, how do you explain the holes in the light bulbs and the straws that are cut? And how do you explain this? And just lie after lie. But now he is a full-fledged, like really bad addict. And blaming me. I'm the problem. I'm the crazy one. I need therapy. He's lying straight to my face. My gut is telling me one thing. My logic is telling me one thing. But my husband is looking at me without even flinching, saying a whole nother story and that I'm crazy. I actually agreed to go to therapy at one point because I thought I was crazy. I'm like, I'm losing my mind. Because what I feel and what I'm thinking, all these conspiracies that I'm coming up with, he's telling me no. And fortunately, it never got physically abusive, but it got very mentally and emotionally abusive. Broke me down every day. I sucked at everything I did. And I started being punished for crimes that I hadn't committed. He would anything. And this is the thing I learned too, is when somebody's really coming at you for something, it's usually because they're the one that's guilty. Right. So, I had to sit with all of that, but now I'm older. I'd been through it. I had said I wasn't going to do it again. So I'm the one that's like, no. I also learned a valuable lesson. One, you cannot help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. I did get him to a point where he did agree to go to a methadone clinic, which also was a problem. He ended up having seizures. He lied to me about doctor's results, saying he had holes in his brain. I'm like, yeah, drugs will do that. But he lied to me about everything. And so these seizures, I'm like, seizures happen if you're doing methadone and you're still doing drugs, or you're playing with it. And his family, they enabled him. They turned on me. I was the bad guy. I took so much hate, and I just had to let everybody go. And I sent him back home. I'm like, go get help. I told my mom when I sent him back, I'm like, if it goes a couple weeks and I miss him, then I'll know there's still something here. A couple weeks went by and I was like, stay. And I was like, you need to stay. So I went and filed for divorce, and then had to wait for it to time out, because he never actually signed. It got really toxic again, but finally we went our separate ways. So I was already dealing with that. I owned a bar and ended up getting blindsided by the people that bought the property. They were supposed to honor my lease. I put in a bid for it, got outbid, and they got it. And then they padlocked me out with no notice. And at the time I'm like, I'm done. I'm just done with everybody at this point. So I let everything go. I let my credit card debt, friends, everything just go. And I found myself, I was 27, on Maui, just being like, now what? What do I do? And that's when my life started getting really awesome, because I learned how to heal, started on the healing path journey. And with all that long-winded story, I'm so thankful that everything happened, because I trust my gut. Like, I understand my intuition, and it set me up on this path that I can help others, because I've been there and people are like, how are you a life coach? Your life was shit. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm a life coach. I can help you get through your shit. I didn't just read about it in a book. I lived it, and I figured out how to get myself out from the depths and get really happy and healthy.
Did you end up, when you say you got on the path of healing, was there something significant or a single event that kind of pushed you that way, or did you go looking for it? So Maui is a very, very, very spiritual place, and that island rocked me to my core. It stripped me down of everything I thought I knew. Because when I was married, I had a bar, I had owned 3 Jeeps, and I lived in a gorgeous 3-story house in Hawaii. Like, I had it all, but I wasn't happy. So it stripped me down of everything and taught me what happiness really was. And there were a lot of different spiritual journeys that happened to put me on the path. One of them was, though, because I wasn't raised to be very religious. My parents let me explore anything that I needed to. And I remember just not having any money and being broken down and like, what do I do? And I went and I checked the mail, and my grandma, who had passed away a couple years ago, all of a sudden there was a couple $100 that was left to me, just the way that it shook out through the kids. And I was like, how did that, like, it was such just the divine timing. And I was like, there's something else here. I'm being protected. So I started learning and meeting new friends. I got into essential oils, like many people do. Essential oils were the gateway into the healing. They're a gateway drug.
They are a gateway, but I fully, like, I won't go home or leave home without them. But yeah, it was a series of random events and just so many coincidences that I don't believe in coincidence.
When did the plan, or when did the application of going to school for specific training related to this happen?
So fast forward through all of that, I had found my healing. I was teaching essential oil classes at that point. I was going to all these different, just different classes and people and all the things, into all of it. And somebody had deemed me, they're like, you're a life coach. And I got mad. I'm like, no, I'm not. That's a dumb term.
What year are we talking about at this point?
Oh, Lord. 2010-ish?
Was life coach even a thing back?
Not really. It definitely hadn't gotten to the TV where it's like, oh, I'm a life coach and making fun of it. It was still new. And I got to be part of an event that actually, so yes, there is a thing that changed my life. So I got to be part of a weekend. If anybody knows of Mind Valley, Vishen Lakhiani, who started Mind Valley, he put on this festival. It was Awesomeness Fest. He shortened it to A-Fest. But this weekend had like the best of the best. Lisa Nichols was there. Drew Canoli. There was just so many. Kyle Sees was there. People that are big influences in the spiritual life coaching, whatever realm. And I got to connect with all these people, and going into it, I didn't know anybody like that existed. I didn't know that you could have like really wealthy people that were also, holistically in tune and nice. And it opened my eyes and changed everything for me. So I started studying and following these guys. I started, Drew Canoli he was doing juicing, like juicing vegetables. So I got into juicing. I just got really healthy. And I practiced all of that and followed everybody, read the books, did all the stuff for years. And then in 2013, whole nother story, I got pregnant, not from my ex-husband, random life happens.
Those essential oils.
But I've ended up found myself I was now 31, going into pregnancy, knowing I was going to be a single mom through my pregnancy. And I had my daughter in Hawaii, and when she was 7 months, I'm like, I can't be out here. It's not her energy. I got to go. So I ended up moving to Arizona to be closer to my mom. And then I didn't want to stay in Arizona. Like, there's no water there. I just came from the ocean. I can't be in the desert. And so I kept trying to leave. But I got in a car accident after 2 weeks of living there. And so that made me stay there. And then I found my school, and that's when I started putting all the credentials to all of the stuff that I had learned.
And when you say you found the school, what was the school? What were you aiming to study at this school?
I didn't know. I just knew that for a long time, for years, I had wanted to do some sort of schooling because I didn't get to, because my plan got derailed. So
Bring the mic just a little bit closer.
I never got to go to school because I didn't go to San Diego. My life went all these different ways. So I'm like, I need to go to school. I didn't go to college. So I found the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, and it looked like it was in alignment with all the stuff that I naturally love. Astrology and all of the woo stuff. So I joined and I did their mind-body transformational psychology program, which was like a 2-year degree. And then I got certified in clinical hypnotherapy, life coaching, and then Reiki energy work. And I wrapped that up. I don't know how many years it's been.
What's Reiki?
Reiki energy work. So it's a Japanese form of energy work where you're just moving energy. Everything's energy. So you're moving the energy through people's bodies and getting it out, helping with blocks and whatnot. There's a protocol to go. It's actually, there is science behind it. It's not woo-woo. Feels woo-woo. Even when I had it the first couple times, I was like, I don't know about this. But the very first time I had it, I was like, that didn't feel like anything. And then I went to leave and I was at the top of an escalator and the whole thing went whoop. And I was like, I can't get down this escalator. Something happened. It helps because everything that happens to us in our life stays in our body. It stays in our subconscious. It stays in our cell memory, and it just can get stuck if you don't do anything to acknowledge it and move it out. So Reiki is a very subtle form that helps move that energy out, if that makes sense.
Got it. So when is the transition then into wanting to take all that you learned and put it towards helping first responders? Let's see. So I had gone with my private practice in the complete opposite direction in the beginning of my career. I was helping more punk people, I guess, like controversial people, you can say. There's a lot there. But I was seeing, like, I'm friends with cops and I'm seeing stuff, and I was just seeing a disconnect where it's like, all my friends, I love them, but they were like, yeah, I tried to go do a presentation at a police department and they didn't want to hear me. I'm like, did you show up in yoga pants? Because first of all, like, I get that you're a yoga instructor, but if you're trying to do like first impression, take a shower. Like, I love you, but dude, like, you can't go in. That they don't understand it. And so I quickly found myself being like, I understand things a little bit differently and I think I can help. And then I had met Chris and we'd been talking, and Chris is also, so he's my business partner. He's my life partner. We met at that school. So we were in a class together, and. Is he your essential oil supplier?
I'm his.
Oh, okay.
But when I first met him, we were in this class, and again, these are not to knock. I love my people. I do, but these are very man bun people, guys. And then there was Chris. And we were in this class, and the teacher had asked him a question about like, oh, you're a cop, and talking about eye contact and how people look when they're trying to remember, when they're lying or whatever. And I just like tuned into him being like, who's this? He's not like everybody else here. He followed the same path. He had done hypnotherapy, life coaching. He hadn't gotten into Reiki yet, but we connected, and we weren't interested. We were at that time and place. Neither of us were in a place for a relationship. I'm like, I'm not going to date you because you're a cop. Like, nope, I'm not interested. But our kids were the same age. And so we started hanging out, and we just connected. We got it. We got it on every single level, and we started having these conversations and sparking this passion of like, this makes sense. Like, we could help teach people. So fast forward, I ended up meeting somebody who had a coaching business. And
specializing in law enforcement first responders. Nope. Or just a coaching business? Just
a coaching platform online. Did not have any connection to law enforcement whatsoever. So the very first time that we met, he had asked me, do you know anybody that would be good? And I was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. And so from that day, the first time we met, I introduced Chris to him, and then Chris introduced one of his best friends. It's also a cop. And then we had moved forward. creating coaching for law enforcement, trying to figure that out. There's a lot of that story, but we don't have to go into all that.
But what I'm getting at is there was a specific plan and shift to start targeting that audience, so to speak.
So, and it was before COVID. It was before all of the movements. We had already started, all expressed interest of like, let's try to work with law enforcement. We had gotten a department to say, yes, like, let's try this. And so we just kind of tripped our way forward, trying to figure out like, what does this look like? Let's bring the coaching practice. We know how to translate the holistic world so that it makes sense. And once we started, I had the clients come to me, and I was able to understand their mindset, like how to say things in a certain way that, not namaste, but, you know, like, hey, this is how you can actually apply this to being on patrol or whatever that looks like. And we were getting really good feedback, really good testimonials from it. And it just started to grow and develop. And we ended up getting, you know, going around the country, and it just grew, and studying it more and more and getting more into it, talking to people. I lost count. I don't know how many clients I've had. I've been now hyper focused on law enforcement for over 3 years now, just working on that. So now my brain is like full on. I can see, I call it a Rubik's Cube, because there's just so many different facets. And I talk to so many different people that I'm like, okay, like dialed into what law enforcement's needing and how we can help.
A very rhetorical question, but how soon should somebody start working with somebody like you
yesterday?
in their law enforcement? Well, they haven't started their law enforcement career yet, so they can't start it yesterday.
Okay.
But you know, is this something that, and as I'm asking it, I can hear it in my head, but is it something that benefits you from the start of your career?
Yeah. So I'm a huge advocate. One of our goals is to get coaching implemented from the academy level, right out the gate. We have to break the stigma. I'm going to go on a soapbox tangent.
It's your podcast. We're just hanging around.
We got to break the stigma. We got to, and these words that are getting thrown around, everybody's talking about it, but I feel like a lot of people are talking at each other, and they're not necessarily listening and being like, okay, let's actually implement that. Wellness is more than just a buzzword. Like, we really need to dive into that. And that's going to start at the beginning of a career. Like, we can help, absolutely help wherever you are. That's the great thing about coaching. We're trained to meet you where you're at, because the coaching session is about you. Just like you're saying that this podcast, that's my thing. Coaching session is about you. What do you need? Because not everything works for everybody. What works for you is not going to work for me. It has to make sense. Not only does it have to make sense, but it has to resonate with your feelings. And like, is this achievable and believable? Can I actually do this? So with coaching, if it got implemented from the academy, like my plan would be do a 5-year case study starting at the academy, where everybody that's going through the academy works with a coach. And that's not like weekly. This isn't therapy. I want to be very clear. Coaching is not therapy. Not to knock therapy. There's time and place. Therapy traditionally works on diagnosing. There's times where I'm like, I don't need a therapist. I just need to talk to somebody. It's not about diagnosing. It's just about having extra support, getting the thoughts out of your head, looking at them again with a Rubik's Cube, just twisting it, having somebody help you twist to be like, oh, that makes sense now. I didn't see it that way. I didn't know that I was able to achieve that. So starting in the academy level, working with a coach consistently for the beginning of your career. And then for me, once you get to like the 5-year mark, possibly turning into a coach so that you can instantly turn around and start coaching the new recruits. Because one of the things I hear is there's such a disconnect from command down, like everybody. There's just so many little disconnects, and it depends on the department. But yeah, I think starting at the beginning would be, if we did that within 5 years, the entire infrastructure of wellness within law enforcement would change.
And I've used the analogy talking about change can occur in law enforcement, and we've seen it. And I use the example of 30 years on the job of when I started, there were guys who still regularly smoked. And I've asked other cops today, how many cops do you see that smoke? And it's not as common. It's almost not, hardly anybody does anymore. Did it happen overnight? No. The same way we have to normalize the importance of addressing your mental health. And not, like you said, not everybody needs to go to counseling. Not everybody is going to address and deal with trauma the same way. But if we make it normalized to at least acknowledge it. Yep. And I've even just used the analogy, if we could just get every training officer to start with a trainee going, how did that call make you feel? Something as simple as that. Just start acknowledging that what we experience impacts how we feel.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that everybody is going to feel the same way, but for those people who feel it more, they need to feel safe enough to express, hey, that bothered me. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And not getting punished for saying that, because that's part of the thing. And so one of the things that I'm not going to ever try to pretend like I'm something I'm not. I have not been a cop myself, but I have been.
But you've written more tickets than a lot of them.
I did. But that mindset, and because I get to talk to these people, and because I'm not a cop, I'm not a therapist, it neutralizes. So people tell me a lot of things, and I get to hear it. And then I'll just throw out, I'll go on Facebook groups or Facebook or friends or whatever, and I'll just be like, hey, I asked a question the other day in a Facebook group. I'm like, it was a spouse group. I was like, hey, why do you guys think that your Leos aren't actively seeking help? I mean, just floods of comments, pages. I was like, holy cow, I kicked a hornet's nest. And the answers were number one answer was fear of losing their job, fear of judgment, fear of this, fear. It came down to fear. And so Chris and I, we talked about it. It's like, okay, so they're not seeking any kind of help because they're afraid of whatever. And the thing is, it's justified fear. I still am hearing stories. We're getting better, and some departments are nailing it. There are chiefs that are like, I want my people to be taken care of. What do we need to do? But there are still some that are like, no, I didn't have it. I'm fine. Figure it out. They're just not supportive necessarily. So that needs to change. But that fear. So it's interesting because do you know the acronym for fear?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So there's 3 different ones that I'm aware of. So one is false evidence appearing real, face everything and rise, fuck everything and run. Cops are not in a fuck everything and run mindset. You're in a face everything and rise. You will go headfirst into whatever is going on. And then all of a sudden with wellness, you're not willing to face everything and rise. You're not willing to just deal with it. So that goes into the false evidence appearing real. We create these stories. If I seek out help, if I go to command and say, I'm having a problem, if I do go to my field training officer and say, that made me feel a certain way, they're going to look at me different. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get, put on light duty, whatever. And that is learned behavior, because that's what's happened in decades now. So we have to change it. So command, and I know people are like, who are you to tell me, but I'm telling you, command needs to be supportive and say, hey, okay, let's talk about it. You're not going to get in trouble if you're talking about it. You're saying this is upsetting. I'd rather have you tell me that it's upsetting and figure out what you need to get past that than having another officer death on my hands, or not even the officer suicide. That's already its own. It's almost becoming a cultural norm, which is not okay. We need to autocorrect that real quick. But these reactive responses to things on the street, because when you talk about PTS, a lot of people will, 4th of July comes up or fireworks, and they're like, oh, but the vets and the cops and all the people, it's like, that may affect some. And I'm by no means a PTS expert, so I don't want anybody to be like, oh, what do you know? But I'm saying, most of the time, if you have PTS with something like that, you're like, no, I understand it's 4th of July. I know there's going to be loud noises. I'm fine. I know what to do to take control of that. That's not what the trigger is. It's when you're just relaxed. We're sitting here right now and the glass falls and breaks. Now you're triggered because you didn't have control over it. And now you're into another space. So these officers that are suppressing these feelings, not talking about it, not seeking out any kind of help, I'm fine. And then the next thing, they're out on a routine traffic stop, something happens that triggers them, and now they're reacting and being videoed, and they're reacting to that. Now they're, fight or flight, and it's just a shit show. And now the media has a field day with it, where if you would have dialed it back and you would have just checked in with yourself or talked about it or said, hey, something's going on here, then you'd be able to learn tools so that you can learn how to respond. Because reaction is emotional. Responding is like, I need to breathe, and what do I do here?
Right. And I think for me, looking at it from an insider but an outsider's perspective, in the sense of, I understand we need to improve it. I understand that we are fighting an uphill battle, because you've still got the majority of law enforcement administration today, the 20 to 30 year veterans, have all come up in that era of push it all down, don't talk about it, don't cry about it, move on to the next one. But I also understand the dichotomy of police work, because we need people who can push it down, not cry, and move on to the next one. Because unfortunately, you see a horrible call at the start of your shift. That doesn't mean you get to go home for the rest of the day. And, you've got to be able to push it down and keep moving forward. So that we do have to have that balancing.
There is balance. And that's the thing. Balance is the key. And yeah, you have to be in control of your emotions enough and know how to compartmentalize and know how to shut down so that you can get through the call, you can get through the day, you can get through it to the end and not be freaking out. However, I think it's really, really imperative that departments do a really solid debrief immediately. If you have something kick out on a Friday, don't make your people go home and wait the weekend to come back Monday, because now what's happening is they're at home and they're either creating a story, they're repeating a story in their head, they're not seeking help. And if they don't have healthy coping mechanisms, they're going to go to their default. They're going to drink more. They're going to do whatever it is they're doing because they're trying to escape it. Or they're going to come home and they're going to dump on their spouse and tell them everything, which then you get into a whole secondhand trauma where now your spouse is like, quit, it's not worth it. Or you try to protect your spouse, so you isolate and you shut down, and now they think that you don't love them anymore because you're shut down. There's so much home play to it as well. So it's really important for the department to bring the people in and talk about it, and immediately. And not just the people, have a debrief with the people that were involved, but debrief everybody, open it up, have your peer support programs. And if you don't have peer support, go borrow another department, have somebody come in, because you don't know, like maybe you don't know what's triggering the other people. It could be a dead baby. That's one of the biggest triggers, right? So you have a dead baby, you have somebody that had that similar call 5 years ago. They'd been fine until all of a sudden now they're like, shit, again, and just having that support and going in and being able to talk about it, getting it out, moving the energy out of your body can help so much. And then knowing you're not alone.
And I do believe that the growth of peer support networks within agencies is phenomenal, because again, trying to look at it from both sides. Peer support, people like me, people who know what I'm going through are going to understand what I'm going through. The flip side, that's Bob. I don't want Bob to know what I'm feeling, because then, tomorrow he may not say anything out loud, but wow, he looks at me differently. I mean, just in their mind.
Yep.
And from the people that I've talked to for those organizations that can afford to have professional staff in the departments, psychologists, whatever, to where, as I've heard it explained, to where they become like a piece of furniture. You walk by them every day, and pretty soon it goes from Dr. Bill, oh, I'm not going to talk to Dr. Bill, to, hey, Bill, to, hey, Bill, can I talk to you?
Yeah.
It's that slow process of getting people used to, it's just somebody I can go talk to when I need to, kind of deal. So obviously not every organization has that ability.
Right.
And so they do need to grow their peer support network, but it's just a slow process to get people on board.
It's a slow process. And from my understanding, there's not really a solid guideline. Like every department's kind of doing it different. Every state's doing it different. Everybody's trying to figure it out, which is great. And having the therapist, having everybody on there, it's really important. And it does take time, because you have to have trust. You have to build rapport with that person. One of the things with coaching that we have done is that, because we've heard that too, is I don't want to go talk to somebody within my department because it's too close, especially the smaller departments where everybody knows everybody. Like my high school, we all knew each other. So being able to reach out, our coaches are across the country and it's online. So you can reach out to someone if you're in California, you can talk to somebody in Nebraska that has nothing to do with your department, your social circle. You're not going to lose your job. Nobody's going to know. It's all confidential. So you can reach out and you set it up with what works for your schedule. And you can find a coach that resonates. And the thing for me, not just with our coaches, but any wellness person, if the first one, you don't like it, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. That means, like, I always use tacos as an example. There's a million different types of tacos. Some people think that Taco Bell tacos are like legit tacos and that they're the best.
They're not.
But everybody has a different flavor.
At 3 o'clock in the morning when you're drunk.
Jack in the Box.
No. For those out there that like the Jack in the Box tacos, sorry, I'm not on that train.
Oh, see, you and Chris, you just disconnected because he's all about the Jack in the Box.
Slice of American cheese in it. No.
But no, so there's a different flavor for everybody else. So if one practitioner, you're like, nope, that doesn't resonate, find the person that will. And once you do, then you can start really getting somewhere.
And everybody that's on your staff with your company, law enforcement coaching, they're all connected to law enforcement somehow. Either they were former or current, or they're, like in your case, basically grew up as a cop. Right
now, I'm the only civilian. Everybody else is legit law enforcement. Eventually, as we grow, which we are planning on at least doubling our amount of coaches that we have in the next 3 to 6 months. I'm not sure yet. We may bring in some specialized, but everybody has to have some sort of direct connection. You have to understand the mindset of it. That's the difference. Is even for me, when I was going through all of that stuff with my ex and my dad and trying to figure it out, when I was a bank teller, we had free therapy sessions. So I was like, okay, I'll go. The guy didn't understand me at all. I don't know how we ended up getting on this conversation. We started talking about guns and shooting, which wasn't even like a thing. And I remember I said something about, like, I was trained to shoot to kill, and he started questioning me, and we started arguing with me, and I'm like, you don't get it. And I left. I got pissed. And that was the last therapy session I ever did because he didn't get it. And that's one of my driving forces. I'm like, you have to understand the mindset, because if you don't, and I'm not saying like I get it as much as I can, right? But yeah, you have to understand the languaging. You have to understand that some of these things that seem like they'll work for other people, it's not realistic for law enforcement. It's not the same. So that's where we come in with our coaches that are all law enforcement, whether active or retired. And when we do bring in the next cohort of coaches, they're going to have to earn it. Anybody that's on our team is going to be very heavily vetted and trained for like at least 3 months. My first, we're redoing it, and that's why I'm sharing, because I'm not doing this whole rush through to have a resume thing and be like, oh, I do this. It's like, no, on our team, you have to show that you have the utmost integrity. You are honest, you have respect, and you really want to be here and really are genuinely going to do the work on yourself so that you're always in a balanced place to be able to help others. So the first month when we do this training, the first month is you're going to work with a coach and you're going to work on yourself. From there, you're going to go through the training to learn how to actually become a coach. And then from there, the next is a probationary period where you can start seeing clients. But after you're basically debrief from your session, you're not talking about what happened in the session, but you're talking about how you handled it and what you think you could do better. So every coach will be paired with a mentor, which is our current coaches. And then if they pass all of that, they'll become actual coaches with us.
So somebody decides they want to give this a try. I'm going to go to a life coach, and first session with you, walk me through how it starts.
Very simple. The main thing right away is just building rapport. Just how we start in, get to know each other, because you have to feel comfortable. And for me, just talk about what's going on. And then I start asking questions of, like, what's up for you? Like, what's going on for you? What's stressing you out? We do have people fill out a client questionnaire before, so we can kind of be like, what are you wanting to work on? And sadly, right now, I can say 100% of our people that have filled out the client intake form recently, every single one has said they have thought about quitting or leaving their job within the last 6 months. So right there, and it's not our place to say. stay or go. That's up to you. However, if you are going to go, we want to make sure that you're leaving in the right mental space, that you're not going to regret it and you're not going to go into depression or whatever else, and you're not reacting emotionally. So for that, if I were to go into that topic with somebody, my first question is, are you going to leave by this weekend? Well, no. Okay. We're just going to focus on this week. What do you need in order to reframe your mindset to get you through to the weekend? Let's talk about that. So we just start working on whatever's up for them, talk about it, and then I ask questions. You would make a great coach because I've watched some of your podcast episodes and you know how to just sit back and listen and ask questions, not interject your opinion, not try to fix anything, not try to give advice, because coaches do not give advice, not be like, oh, you should quit or you should stay, whatever, you need to ride it out because the pension's worth it. Like, that's not what we do. What's going to be right for that person? So the way that you do your podcast and you're just so like back, it's basically what we do with coaching.
But the thing is that it doesn't, I don't feel that what would work for me is going to work for somebody else. And so for me to sit there and try to tell somebody you should quit this job or you should stay, no, you need to follow your heart.
Yep.
And I get it. Trust me, I understand that there are a lot of us out there that are like, I'm done with this. I'm walking away from it. And if that's truly where your heart is at, then that's what you've got to do.
That's what you got to do.
The only thing I ever say is if you're walking away because you're tired of the noise, understand that those who really need us are not making noise. Mm-hmm. And when you walk away because of the noise, you're walking away from the silent majority that really need us. If you're okay with that, then make your decision. Absolutely.
I also need to say, so social media censors, and I've found it out. I've taken screenshots and I intend to use it in my presentations when I do go to departments and I'm doing conferences and whatnot, because on certain social media platforms, I had posted something and I know my audience, like I know I'm going to get some reaction. And all of a sudden I posted something where it should have had a really good reaction. I got nothing. And I was like, that's not right. There's a few people, like if they don't like something I post, I'm like, are you okay? Are you in the hospital? You're alive? Did you see it? And so I did an experiment and I did back-to-back 4 posts. And the first one is like, hey, I'm noticing something every time I post something about my business, and I'm needing you guys to like pay attention and engage on the next couple posts. Sorry for blowing up your feed, but I need to know what's being seen. And so I didn't say anything about law enforcement in that first one. The second one, I posted a YouTube link to a video I had made that was very pro law enforcement. And then the third post was, back the blue, support law enforcement, like all really good stuff. And then I said, post 3 of 4. And then post 4 was, here's a random picture of my kid. Post 1 and 4 got tons of engagement right out the gate. These people were looking for it. And they're like, unless we go to your page and scroll down, we cannot find this post. And every once in a while I'll forget. And so I'll throw something out like, hey, we're going to San Diego because we're doing all this stuff. Didn't get seen. And I was like, oh. So I have to go back, delete the post, come back being like, forgot, I'm not allowed to talk about what I actually do. So a lot of this, like the community doesn't support us or whatever, we're literally not allowed to say it. We're being censored. So just knowing that, to go out to the communities. Now, some communities do suck a little bit more than others when it comes to it, but going out to the community, and you're right. If you're going to walk away, one of the questions that I would ask in a session too is, what's next? What are you going to do? Because I've had people like, I'm going to be an Amazon driver. I'm like, really? Are you? Let's look at that. Maybe you are, but let's really think that out. And so we will go into, visualizing what that is, what that would look like, what happens when that doesn't work out and you don't like it.
You're like, I may not know much, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to work for you.
That's not what you're going to want to do. So one of the things is like, you got to get clear. And that's a main part of a coach, because people, they think they know what they want and they'll throw it out there, but the wording isn't right. And they don't understand why it's not coming into them. And one of the things that I teach is remove no, don't, and can't from your vocabulary. Because when you throw that out there, it's just like going onto Google and saying, I don't want to look at houses. What's going to come up? Houses. Well, okay, what do you want? Well, I want to buy a car. Okay, well then say that. Tell the universe what you actually want. We all know what we don't want, but we focus on what we don't want. And then we get pissed when what we do want's not showing up. Like the universe is supposed to just randomly be like, okay. So anybody that's listening to this, try it. Take no, don't, and can't out of your vocabulary, reframe it to the positive, what you do want, and watch how quickly it shows up. People, I used to do this all the time. If I was running behind for school or for work, I'm like, if you say, I don't want to be late, you're going to be late because you're saying, I want to be late. So what do you want? I want to be on time. You'll hit every green light. The universe will open up for you and you'll get there. Might be right on the dot, but you'll get there.
I'm putting that to the test. And if it's wrong,
okay. So here's my default. If it is wrong,
there's always a caveat.
Yes, because sometimes the universe is trying to protect you. There's been so many times where I've gotten hung up where I'm like, I'm supposed to be somewhere and I'm on my time. And had I had been 30 seconds ahead, I would have been part of the accident that happened. That happened so many times that I was late and then there was an accident right in front of me. And I was like 30 seconds ahead, I would have been part of that. So I learned really quick that when the universe is trying to hold you back or detour you, it's not, I always ask, and I teach my clients this too, is it happening to you or is it happening for you? Because if you get out of your own way and your own ego, you'll see, hey, we're trying to put you over here for a reason. You need to be in the right place at the right time so that this can happen. You may not see it, but this is setting up a domino effect that's beyond you.
Have you seen Jocko's little short on good?
I've seen a lot. I got to meet him. But what was that one?
It's basically him saying, I didn't get this promotion. Good.
Yeah.
Means that you need to now go out and basically bust your butt to get it again. I didn't get A, B, or C. Good. Maybe you weren't meant to get it. It's really powerful. As a matter of fact, just this past week, I think it was Trevor Lawrence from the Jaguars mentioned that the coach of the team, and it's a 4 or 5 minute short. It's put to great music. There's great editing behind it, but it just came from a speech, one of his podcasts. But his thing is good. If you didn't get it, good. Did you prepare enough for it? Because it's so easy for us to go, I didn't get it because. No, you didn't get it because you weren't ready for it. Either because you weren't prepared for it, it wasn't your time for it, whatever. And it's just one of those things where, and I'm thinking back to your comment that you just said before about, I would imagine part of the problem is when somebody says, okay, I'm going to go to a life coach, I'm going to go talk to somebody, but they come in with their predisposition and they've got a mindset of how they feel and what they want to hear back from the person they're talking to.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it, it's not them. It's, it was the bad life coach or it's the bad there. They didn't.
Yeah.
And no, you have to suspend your predisposition, talk about your issue and accept what the person, if anything, just put it into your mind and think about it a little bit.
So with Jocko, I do like the extreme ownership, 100%. I take a little bit more woo-woo approach to that, but I've been doing the same thing naturally for so long. And with clients, one of the things that I was taught early in my coaching is when you're pointing the finger at somebody else, you got to figure out how many are pointing back at you. Like one person out there and everybody's like external, right? Chris always says for people coming in, this session's going to be as good as you allow it to be. If you think that this is going to suck and it's not going to work, you're right. Absolutely. And I'm not going to argue with you. That's where you're at. And we're not in the business of trying to convince anybody. I don't need to prove myself to anybody. I know that coaching works because one, I've been coached and I've had so many clients and I've seen their success stories. But if somebody's hell bent on it not working, okay, then it's going to continue to not work. But the good. So the stuff that happens. So like I said, we'd been doing this business for several years. We learned valuable business lessons and something happened to us that we could have easily played victim to. We were blindsided and we were left with one, what the hell just happened? We learned very quickly that people operate with a different value system, especially in business, and especially when money comes on the table. But we looked at it and Chris and I immediately looked at each other and we're like, we're being protected. This is happening for us. This is good. And we pivoted. And that's why we are the CEOs. And people are like, are you guys co-founders? Like, yeah, we're both founders and we're both CEOs and we're equals. We're partners in this. So it's not a co-thing. I say that every once in a while, just so people are like, wait, I'm confused, but we are equals in this because it wouldn't exist. None of it would exist if it weren't for us. And that's not my ego. I can back that up with written fact, timestamp, dated, witnessed. But we created law enforcement coaching based off of the work we had already been doing. And now we get to be in a position where we get to create it the way that we want to, not trying to appease other people, not trying to make other people rich. We get to do our work, mission focused, helping people. And we recognize that immediately. And what was funny is shit kind of blew up right before Father's Day. And so again, my dad's been gone for over 20 years and everything happened. It was Father's Day weekend. It happened on a Thursday that we got this blindside. And we were instantly in like dumpster fire mode for days. I'm, on talking to lawyers and putting together all the things and like, and just in shock. And on Father's Day morning, I woke up, I'm like, you know what? We have been immersed in this for the past couple days. It's Father's Day and Chris is a damn good dad. So I'm like, I'm going to go to the grocery store and we're doing everything. We're doing donuts and bacon and orange juice. Like we're going all out for this. And so it was the first time I'd been out of my house since everything hit the fan. And I pull into the parking lot at the grocery store and it hit me. And I just start ugly crying. And I'm like, Dad, like, are you going to protect me? Are you going to help me? And my dad coming through, he's like, who the fuck do you think did this for you? I was like, what? He yelled at me through spirit. I was like, oh, this is very aggressive.
You're a mean spirit.
Like, right. He was just like, who do you think set you up for this? Like, you didn't lose any money. You got yourself, you wouldn't have done this on your own without these people and this getting you to the point to show you your potential. They did everything they needed to do to get you to where you are. And now you're pissed off enough that you'll go where you need to go. And I was like, oh, damn. My dad just schooled me on Father's Day from beyond. And so I sat there and I was like, whoa, okay. So we went on to have a great breakfast. And I actually took off a couple days later on a planned summer-long road trip with my daughter. My daughter's 8. And it was really good because Chris stayed back. So we're in emotional trauma, basically, and you have to allow the space for the emotions and feelings. And I was so thankful we had a little bit of space so we didn't take it out on each other. We got to process. And for me, that whole trip, so my daughter and I, we went up through Utah, all the way up to Washington, down the coast, all the way, came through LA. We were gone for an entire month. And every time I got an email or a text from somebody that triggered me and pissed me off, I would turn a corner and lose service. So I'm like, I cannot react to that. I'm going to cruise. I'm going to go ground myself in the redwoods. I'm going to go walk on the beach. Like, I was just like, I'm just going to react later from a neutral place and really handle this. Because I'm also a very confrontational person. And if, like, let's talk it out, like, hash it out. And I legally couldn't. I had to shut up. And so that's not comfortable for me at all. So I just had to let it all go. And now we're, almost 7 months past that hiccup. And I'm like, who would have thought that this major thing actually was holding me back from what we were actually meant to do?
For somebody going through your life coaching platform, is it all online or do you do in-person life coaching also?
The majority is online, so that way we're set up to help anybody that's needing it. But most of us are in Arizona, and I go see my clients in person because I like in person. There's something to that. Both are equally beneficial. The person, again, you're going to get what you put in, whatever you want. So, and then we do have our coaches that are out and about, and if they need somebody that wants in person, like, I'm not going to say how. If you feel comfortable, I just don't want anybody to ever put themselves in a weird position. But yeah, mainly 99% online.
I just think with coming out of COVID, everybody is tired of, Zoom and Teams and all those types of meetings. But at the same token, I see the benefit in being able to reach a wider variety of people and just having that, like I said, that ability for that balance. If somebody's close by, we're available for you in person.
Go talk to them. The other thing that we're doing too, because we're not just doing one-on-one. So the other thing that we're doing is group coaching. So, if a department works with us, we can go on, and and pick a topic, how to improve, like how to actually go to sleep without a sleep aid, things that actually work, whatever the topic is. And we'll always have a minimum of 3 coaches on a group coaching call. And then everybody can come in, they can watch, they can participate if they want to ask questions, if they want to learn more, or if they just want to observe. I trust the people that are, if somebody has a question, somebody else has a question, they just didn't ask it. So they're learning. And through that, because how do you get, so first of all, it's hard to get people to seek out and go ask for help because of everything. In a couple years from now, that won't be a thing, but right now it is. So the group coaching allows for people to kind of sit back and be a fly on a wall. And then, say it's me, Chris, and I'll talk. So Cindy, you're supposed to do a podcast with Cindy, and you will still.
Okay.
I'm just setting that intention. But Cindy is specializing in nutrition and really clean, healthy eating. So maybe that's the topic for that. So we'd have all 3, we'd talk about that. And from there, somebody would be like, I really like the energy of this coach. I want to go work with them one-on-one. So that way they're getting what they need. We're going to be launching our own podcast, within the next month or so. Don't know the exact date yet. We're getting it all dialed in. We're going to be releasing blogs. We also will be doing online classes and trainings on specific topics. And then we're always up for going out to departments or conferences to teach, because we need to talk. The people that are like, hey, at least actively trying to be part of the solution. A lot of people kind of might look at me being like, you're not a cop, you're not command, you're not a chief. Like, who are you? And I even intimidated myself a little bit because we're putting in for these conferences and I'm looking at the competition, which I don't believe there's competition in wellness. We all need to come together. But, Harvard, PhDs, and just, everybody that's been on the podcast, like, I had fear, false evidence appearing real. I started comparing myself, being like, oh my God, okay, who am I? What value do I have? But we all need to come together and just speak up more. Everybody people asking me, who are you to speak? Who am I not to? I have something. I've already helped several people step off the ledge of suicide. I have helped people through addiction. Because I had a husband that was an addict, I understand, and I understand the family dynamic too. So I've helped many, many clients. So I absolutely have my hat in this ring of even if I help one person, they needed it. We need it. If everybody had that mentality.
That's the way I look at, in all honesty, that's the way I look at this podcast, is that if there's one person who benefits from it, and when I get that text message from a guest or somebody like, hey, I listened and I'm going to go talk to somebody, or, my friend, my husband, my wife, whoever listened to that, that one person that was impacted by this podcast being there, then it's worth it to me.
Absolutely.
Because, and I've even told this to other guests, is whatever they're doing, if you're not doing it, think of that one person that's not going to be impacted.
Yep.
And again, it goes back to like leaving law enforcement. If you have something that you can give back and there is a potential that somebody can benefit from it and you don't do it, are you okay with it?
It's my question too. So if you've made up your mind, you're done, you're out, you see all these problems, all these issues, and you're done, why are you going to go out quiet? Like, go say, hey, I'm leaving and this is why. Make a stink about it, because nothing's going to change if everybody's just like, I'm out, and just give up. Like, go in and so one of my other core memories was my dad in the sheriff's office with the sheriff, like ripping into him because he did not agree with whatever happened. So I was a teenager. So it was like, he had taught me my whole life, yes sir, no sir, like be respectful. But then he also demonstrated when it was appropriate to rebel against authority, if they're genuinely not doing, they're not open to listening, whatever. I'm not trying to tell you, go yell at your bosses, but I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? There's a fine line, but if you're going to go out, don't go out quiet. Like, at least tell somebody like, hey, if you would have just done this, if I would have been able to safely go and say, hey, I need to take a wellness day, I need a mental health day, I need something, and not have my career threatened, I would have stayed. So I hope you continue to make improvements so that the next generation don't have to deal with this. I'm out. At least say it so that maybe something will change.
What I would add to that, though, is say that if you asked for what you're asking for, or that, you didn't give me that wellness day and your agency didn't give it to you, as opposed to, assuming they wouldn't give it to you and like, I'm out the door. And then the other part of it would be, if you want to go out and you want to go out loudly, think about what you're saying, and is what you're saying helping the younger people that are just on the job improve their police career?
Yes. And
as opposed to, I just want to go out making a lot of noise just to feed my ego.
So, and that goes back to the reacting versus responding. Don't quit. First of all, don't leave because you're having a bad day. Don't leave out of emotion. Like that emotional reactivity, that's going to set you up where later when you do calm down, you're like, shit, could have handled that differently. Right. So do the work to sit and find out that calm thing, and do say whatever it is in a way that's going to benefit other people, and not just, the ego thing. There is some ego that needs to be put in check.
Because unfortunately, there are a lot of my kind putting a lot of information out on social media that departments are just out there to screw you. Departments are just out there to ruin your career. Do some agencies have some policies of how they treat their people that aren't the best? Yes. But you still have to take some personal responsibility for the status of your career. It's like any relationship. You've chosen that there's nothing that's going to work that's going to keep me here. But be open with anybody who will listen to you and say, I'm as much of the problem as my organization is. Don't just walk out the door saying, this is a screwed organization, screw all of you people.
So let's insert. So one of the podcast episodes that we have recorded and haven't launched yet, but it was with a chief, and he had a really interesting perspective on that, is that the department does care about you. They don't want you to get hurt. They don't want you to leave. They want you to stay. They do care about you. Sometimes, like in a relationship, you may just not have a great way of communicating that, where it's like you might be with a partner that you're just supposed to know that they love you. They don't say, I love you. It's assumed, right? So maybe the department needs to do a little bit better way of saying, I love you. Like, thank you for being here. Like that communication, learning effective ways to communicate. There's a great book called Nonviolent Communication. It's kind of a challenging read because it's an easy read, but it's challenging because it challenges your ego. And it really makes you take a step back, being like, could I put myself in this position of somebody's coming at me and not taking it personal, and asking and seeing through and understanding where that person is coming from. I could recommend books too. The 4 Agreements is huge also. Don't take anything personal. It's all coming through a different lens. Everybody's got their own stories. So yeah, if you're going to go in and communicate from a calm place, not hyped up, calm yourself down, really look at it, and then figure out how to have communication that is it's always what is going to be a positive, solution-focused, forward movement conversation. And also, again, going back, we know what you don't want. You don't want to feel like the department doesn't support you and da-da-da. What do you want? Go ask them. So,
wrapping this up.
Yeah.
Giving you the opportunity now, somebody's sitting on that bubble as far as reaching out to a life coach. What's your advice?
Same as I have for my kids when they don't want to try new food. How you know you don't like it if you don't try it?
And with that, we're done.
And done. Mic drop. But no, I mean, seriously, reach out. We'll do complimentary consultations right now, so that you can try it. And I mean, nothing bad's going to happen. So just get over the fear, try it. If you don't like it, maybe it's not for you, but at least open yourself up. And it's not just about us. We are so supportive of anybody in the wellness field. Like, go see acupuncturist, massage therapist. Some people might resonate with you, others aren't. Whatever that is, at least go do something to find some sort of inner peace and wellness. And if that's coaching, awesome, we're here.
Very cool. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.